Saturday, June 19, 11:58 p.m. Ava sat looking at the list on her monitor. Her chest burned with rage. She wasn't so much bothered by this sudden barrage of mildly painful and small irritating things occurring to her at the moment. Rather, she was angry and upset by the list. How could this happen? How could she even get on our list? And how could she climb up the list so fast? Ava's anger was fueled by the idea that she was the victim in all this, that the universe had conspired against her. All she could do now was contemplate her next move, as soon as she broke free of this curse. Friday, May 14, 8:47 p.m. It probably wasn't the smartest choice to return to Hotel Relajado to stay the night, but who could refuse one free night? Besides, this time around, the killers were promised a much better experience. Either way, they had more tournaments for the boys to attend, and they really needed a place to stay on the long trip to their destination. Jack had gone with the twins to go for a swim at the indoor pool about an hour ago. Sarah decided to just sit in the hotel room and relax. It had been a long drive full of bickering kids and dull desert scenery. She just wanted a break from all that, a chance to sit in front of a television and turn off her brain. As Sarah flipped through the channels, she happened upon something strange. One channel had no audio. Even stranger was that the picture was like a live feed of a kaleidoscope, or at least that's what it appeared to be at first glance. The image before her had the effect of two mirrors that were placed across the room from one another, where the images are stacked over and over into a deep and endless hallway which never grows dark. Sarah raised an arm. The person inside the television matched her movement. The realization that a camera was pointed at her from the wall opposite the television sent her into a panic. She turned and looked for the hidden camera, but couldn't locate anything. An hour later, she found herself digging into the drywall with spare utensils to try and find it. But for all the scraping and digging she'd completed, she found that the space between the studs was empty. Sarah had to wait until Jack returned with the boys, since he didn't have his phone on him. She recounted how someone had planted a camera in their room. Jack intended to help investigate the situation. However, when Sarah turned to the channel in question, she found only regularly scheduled programming. Moreover, for all the damage she'd done to the wall, no camera equipment could be found. Sarah was ready to leave, but it was late and they had nowhere else to go for the night. Jack convinced her that, should the hotel allow them to switch rooms, he would make sure this was a safe place for them to remain. 2:02 a.m. Jack woke up to some footsteps coming from the unit above them. He turned one way to look at the clock. Then he turned the other way to see if his wife was awake. She was out, which was surprising considering how high-strung she'd been from the earlier events in the evening. More footsteps from upstairs. Judging from the sound, someone was wearing heavy boots, Jack grumbled. Seriously, at this hour? All of a sudden, Jack heard something that nearly made him fall off the bed. There were footsteps on the wall, the same heavy footsteps. The same rhythm, the same weight, the same everything. Had the sounds not been so similar, Jack might have thought it was just a prank for some kids to put shoes on their hands and walk them around the walls. His family continued to sleep through the noise. Jack considered picking up the phone to call the front desk, but that would certainly wake everyone. Before he could decide to do anything, he began to hear the heavy footsteps that came from the floor below, as if someone were walking on the ceiling from the downstairs unit. But the family was on the first floor, and there wasn't a unit below them. All of the footsteps escalated in volume and pace, just like Jack's heartbeat. Jack covered his ears. All at once, the footsteps came to a halt. His family continued to sleep. Jack lay there trying to steady his heart rate. 4:50 a.m. Pete and Paul woke up. They simultaneously turned over in opposite directions on the second queen bed. Paul started to roll over toward the edge of the bed so that he could slide out and go to the bathroom. Pete whispered, "If you're going to the bathroom, I need to go first. Just wait until I'm done because it's an emergency." "No way! You could have gotten up before me, but you waited around until I started getting up just to make me angry." "But it's so comfortable here in bed." Paul let out an exasperated sigh. Then he quietly jumped out of bed and sprinted toward the bathroom door. Pete made his move at the same time. Paul got inside the bathroom and shut the door just before Pete could attempt to wedge himself in there. The conflict between Paul and Pete was loud enough that it should have woken up both their parents, yet there remained no stirring from either of them. Paul opened up the lid to the toilet. The sight before him caused him to lurch backward, throwing his body against the door. A bulging snake was winding and twisting its way up from the drain. Its head emerged just above the waterline. Had Paul not jumped back, the snake would have been close enough to lunge at him. Paul fell to the floor as the snake's head lifted slowly out of the bowl. Paul heard his brother's voice from the other side of the door. "Paul, what's going on?" He opened the door to let his brother in, but was careful to keep enough space in between himself and the creature. Pete yelped. The boys decided that they needed to keep the snake contained in the toilet. Paul grabbed a towel from the rack. Each boy held one end and pushed the towel against the snake toward the middle of the bowl. Pete dropped his end of the towel and quickly shut the lid of the toilet. For good measure, the boys stacked some heavy items on the lid to keep the snake from escaping again. 7:50 a.m. The family all woke up in succession. All of them stayed in bed with their individual thoughts for a while. As the dim sunlight spilled out of the white curtains on the window, they wondered if perhaps they kept it to themselves, they could eventually forget that the horrific events had even occurred. Monday, May 10, 5:56 p.m. While the HR director delivered the news about terminating Ava's employment, he felt he had to divert his eyes to do so. Somehow it seemed as though she could punish him with her gaze without even saying a word. Her facial expression showed an internal conflict. Her smile, ever growing wider, sought to hide the unbreakable spirit she wished to portray. In spite of the awful situation unfolding before her, yet her eyes constantly seemed to be at the verge of a dam bursting open from sadness and anger. "I've given a lot of years of service to this hotel. The reason it does so well is because of me. Those near-perfect online reviews, all me. You'll realize once I'm gone, and you see that monumental failure it becomes, that I was solely responsible for its success. After we got a poor review from that family, I even sent a personal email and offered them a free stay. They booked a room for this Friday. That issue is resolved. We're grateful for your service, but it has very little to do with the online reviews. There have been reports of mistreatment of the staff. Who's reporting that? I want to know. Obviously, we can't disclose that information. I'm very sorry. We wish you well in your future endeavors." Ava stood up and fixed her gaze on the man sitting before her. Her lip curled up. He could feel the burning hatred penetrating his skin. He worried for a brief moment that she may retaliate with violence, but instead she turned on one heel and stormed out the door. Tuesday, April 27, 9:30 a.m. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Keller, we understand you were unhappy with your recent stay at Hotel Relajado. Please accept our most sincere apologies. As a token of goodwill, I have attached a code for a free one-night stay at our hotel, valid for 1 year following the receipt of this email. We promise to give you a more clean and comfortable experience at your next stay. Please do not hesitate to reach out with any questions or concerns. Signed, Ava Bartolo, Hotel Manager. Friday, April 2, 6:10 p.m. The Keller family arrived at their hotel. They usually didn't have high expectations when choosing a place to stay for the night, but this place had such stellar reviews in spite of the fact that it was just a basic economy hotel. The family of four were directed to their room. With arms full of luggage, they opened the door. To their surprise, they found garbage and clutter littering the room. Jack turned around and looked at Sarah. They said this would be ready for us at 4. When they rounded the corner, they were startled to find a cleaning woman who was still in the room. She was sitting on the bed looking up at the family with a slight frown. Before Jack or Sarah could get any questions out, the woman spoke. "I'm sorry about the room, but since I'm going to get fired anyway, I figure why bother cleaning? I can't take it anymore, the way we were treated." The woman decided that it was against her better judgment to continue, so she got up and walked past the killers and out the door. Sarah opened up the computer following their stay. She didn't usually take the time to do this, but she figured that it was her responsibility to let other customers know about why the good reviews of Hotel Relajado were misleading. Monday, May 17, 10:12 a.m. Sarah thought about last Friday night over and over again. The occurrences caused her nightmares each night since. What had changed between the two different times they'd stayed there? She opened up the email from Miss Bartolo, the hotel manager. Something stuck out which Sarah hadn't noticed before. The signature line included personal contact info for Eva Bartolo, as well as a link to another website. I wonder if she meant to include this, Sarah thought. It's probably auto-populated in all the emails she sends. Sarah was usually careful about clicking on links to random websites, as it could be some kind of phishing scam. However, she'd already confirmed that everything else in the body of the email was legitimate. Her curiosity got the best of her. The website was some kind of place for people to congregate and learn how to craft hexes. It was really poorly designed, with lots of empty white space and floating text of the worst font choices imaginable. Sarah wondered if this was by design. If someone happened upon the site by accident, they likely wouldn't take it seriously. The first tab had a welcome message on it. The second was a list of rules. Sarah just skimmed through them quickly, but most had to do with not using the hexes for seriously injuring or mortally wounding your nemesis. To go any further would arouse suspicion. The third tab had a list of members. It was organized like a hierarchy. The list was massive, but she didn't have to scan far down the list to get to the name she was looking for. Number 15, Eva Bartolo. Sarah looked out the window and took a sip of coffee. She thought about every awful thing that happened in the past few months, beginning with that first night at Hotel Relajado. Following some deep contemplation, Sarah picked up the phone and dialed the front desk. "Hi, may I speak with your manager, Miss Eva Bartolo?" "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, but Miss Bartolo is no longer working here." Saturday, June 19, midnight. Eva worked her way down the list of people who would be punished remotely by all kinds of torturous but mild irritations and inconveniences. They would be none the wiser. The problem was that the list seemed to grow faster than she'd time to address. Oh well, the Keller family and that jerk from HR who fired her got what they deserved. Out of nowhere, the walls of her den began to close in on her. They twisted and shook, activating her extreme vertigo. Eva had to press her head in between her legs to keep from vomiting everywhere. This wasn't normal. As soon as Eva could get her bearings, she rolled her office chair up to the computer. Focusing at the fixed point directly in front of her seemed to help. Her first instinct was to go to the hex crafting site, but she paused instead. Eva opened up the sent items in her email. There it was, the link to her signature that she forgot to delete. How could she be so careless? Finally, Eva went straight to the list. She knew which name she was looking for. What she didn't expect was how quickly it would appear. Sarah Keller, number 4. That's it, Eva said to herself. To hell with the rules.